Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Detonation. Today we have a very special, extra special guest. It's Zoltan Itzvan. He's a leading transhumanist, an author, science fiction novelist. He ran for the United States president. He founded the Transhumanism Party. He knows all about the trajectory of science and technology and where it's all happening. Mr. Itzvan, welcome to Detonation.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So I wanted to just go to the catalyst, the genesis block of your experience, and that was the landmine. Can you tell everybody the landmine, how that rapidly changed the direction of your life?
Well, so I used to be a journalist for National Geographic, and I had a very close call with a landmine while doing a story in Vietnam in the demilitarized zone, and a guide sort of pushed me out of the way as I was filming this episode, and it really got me thinking about how dangerous life is, and what happens in case you do actually step on a mine and you just get blown in half or you die or whatever. And lo and behold, I did a load of research, and there's this great movement, transhumanism, life extension, cyborgism, whatever you want to call it. I call it transhumanism, that is trying to overcome death with science and technology. And while I'd known about this movement, it wasn't until the landmine incident for National Geographic that I really said, this is a movement that I have to join. And once I joined it, I realized that there's an entire body now, millions of people dedicated to overcoming death through radical science and technology.
Yeah, so you worked for Nat Geo. You did the volcano, the surfing thing. That was fantastic. But the immortality bus. So you drove around America in a coffin-shaped bus. It got millions of views on the internet. It was a successful marketing campaign. Just quickly delve into that for a second. Where did you get the inspiration for that?
Well, so when I entered the transhumanist movement, there really wasn't any political party or any kind of politics involved with it. So I founded the Transhumanist Party, and through just a quick nomination process, was nominated to run for president for our party. And in America, there's about 1,000 different kinds of people that run for president, and I was just this one guy doing it. But we needed something that really got attention, and because we're trying to overcome death, we thought, okay, well, let's convert a giant campaign bus into a giant coffin and drive it across America and deliver a transhumanist Bill of Rights to the U.S. Capitol building. What we didn't realize was when you got stuck in rush hour traffic in San Francisco on the Golden Gate Bridge or somewhere else, and you have your website on the side of the bus, you have thousands of people researching you right then. And as we started crisscrossing across the country over a 4-month trip, it started getting bigger and bigger, and pretty soon we had the New York Times on, we had Fox News covering us, everybody, and it was just a wonderful marketing campaign, because of course I had no chance of winning the presidency, but we really did teach, hopefully 50, 100 million people about what transhumanism is and what it means to actually dedicate your life to trying to overcome death through science and technology.
So something really important that you did that people don't really know about is you wrote a book called The Transhumanist Wager, and in there's a character called Jethno Knights. Why is The Transhumanist Wager such a fundamental book, and who is Jethro Knights, and how does he relate to your personality?
Well, I like to say that I'm not Jethro Knights, because he is a very controversial figure. And while I love the book, and I'm very excited to have written it, and it's done so well, certainly become one of the most well-read books in the transhumanist movement, he is a truly dedicated person to making this concept of what we call the transhumanist wager, which is like Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager says, basically you dedicate your life to God so that you have a better chance in the afterlife in case God exists. You're not really sure God exists. Well, the transhumanist wager says, on Earth, you should dedicate your life to science and technology on overcoming death, because that's the very best chance you have of not having to worry about an afterlife. You could just stay here alive on planet Earth. And that's really what the book is about, except it's in a novel form, and the main character takes that idea through world wars and whatnot, and really creates a lot of controversy on planet Earth, but his ultimate aim is really to just overcome death.
So you mentioned Pascal's wager, which is kind of an early type of game theory, and it's based on inevitability, probability, and stuff. Why are you an atheist? Why is that a logical conclusion?
Well, so, I say I'm an atheist, but really I don't know 100%. I would say I'm much more philosophically an agnostic. However, what's happened is if you study history, you say, wow, the religious fundamentalism has really damaged science and technology and our overall sense of innovation. So I kind of go out there and say I'm an atheist just because I feel like to balance the tables, we need more strong secular people out there. But philosophically, as a philosophy student, I really don't know what's happened. But I think it's important that we understand that, like in America, about 80% of people believe in an afterlife. Our president believes in an afterlife. The entire Supreme Court believes in an afterlife. They don't want to spend much money or resources on worrying about living indefinitely, whether it's through science or however, just because they kind of think they already got it. They already think they're just going to die and meet their maker and live in this beautiful afterlife. Well, most transhumanists don't feel that way. Most transhumanists are scientific minded. They think when you die, your body probably just becomes either, if you're cremated, you become ash, or you just become food for worms. So transhumanists want to overcome that. That's really their main goal, and most of them are secular oriented.
I would like to help. I would like you to help me define what transhumanism is. Is transhumanism the first time we used our hands to pick fruit and start to develop tools and technology in stone and put clothes on? Is that transhumanism, or is transhumanism something much more akin to the Silicon Age, or is it just this overarching self-directed evolution? What is transhuman? What's the definition of it? Help me define it.
Well, honestly, I like to say that the definition is definitely up to you. But what I usually say is it's a social movement that now consists of many millions of people that are trying to use science and technology to radically modify the human body and, just as importantly, radically modify the human experience. And, in my book, it can be anything from something like driverless cars to brain implants to exoskeleton suits that allow you to, climb Mount Everest, even if you're an 80-year-old. But some people will say, hey, the very first time a primate picked up a stone and made an axe out of it, that became transhumanism. I'm okay with that definition too, but I really think it's kind of the top 10% of the most radical science and technologies out there. That's generally considered transhumanism, especially when it applies to the actual human body.
What did you think of Julian Huxley? He's the guy who sort of founded the word transhumanism. What do you think? Do you take much inspiration from Julian Huxley?
Not that much. I don't really take that much, inspiration from the history of the word or even the history of the movement, because really in California in the 90s, the social side of the movement began. What I like to say, though, to people that don't know that much about it is think of environmentalism. 30 years ago, environmentalists were saying, don't hurt the whales, don't cut down trees, let's start recycling. And most of the world wasn't listening. But all of a sudden, 30 years later, I would say half the world's population generally now considers themselves green and and understands the concept of preserving the earth. Well, transhumanism is a very similar social movement. There's a lot of us now saying we might evolve into AI, we might evolve into robots, we might leave our flesh behind. It sounds pretty radical, but in 20 or 30 years, it won't sound so radical when we've already overcome death, when we're now using genetic engineering to create designer babies, when we have artificial wombs, when we can tie our brains to computers. Then it'll be like, wow, half the world's population is a transhumanist. So that's sort of the trajectory. We're following the trajectory of the environmental movement, even though our philosophies and our ideas are totally different. That's how social movements evolve.
Yeah, so something that people are talking about in the short term are bionic organs, reverse engineering through genetics, CRISPR-Cas9, designer babies, and something you call the delayed fertility advantage. What do you think of these emerging technologies, and what do you think the public needs to know? And are scientists selling these technologies in the right way, or do they have to sell anything at all? Is it up to governments?
Well, let's just take delayed fertility advantage. It's such an amazing concept. It's this idea that, because of stem cell technology that you can get from your cheek, your biological clock for a woman can now be pushed off maybe 30 or 40 years, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of years. The idea that a 70-year-old woman can now very easily have a child in probably 2 or 3 years' time, because we just take the stem cell, and turn it into an egg, then we create a sperm cell as well. One person create both sperm and egg now just because of stem cells. This is such a wild concept. It completely redefines procreation. It redefines even the ideas of marriage and having children. So we're entering this crazy time when it's very hard as a scientist or a philosopher to talk about these things without scaring everybody to death, because honestly, if you have any kind of traditionalism in your viewpoint, you're going to be like, wow, this is out there. But what's happening is this is not out there. This is 1, 2 years away, 3 years away. We're coming to a very radical time when the evolution of technology and the evolution of science is literally changing the nature of what it means to be a human being. And there's very, like last year in China, they had the very first genetically enhanced child that was born. I mean, we're coming to a point when they're going to try to augment intelligence. And let's say Australia and in America, for example, we're a bit more conservative. We don't want to move forward with some of these technologies, but China moves forward. Well, now you have a generation of Chinese babies that are born with super intelligences where we, because maybe we've been more conservative, don't. How does that affect geopolitics? How does that affect the future of the world? It's coming so fast that the most important thing to do right now is discuss the issues and try to make sound choices so that we don't get left behind and we can kind of move together as a world, as a globe in kind of ethical tandem steps.
Why do you think genetics and IQ have become taboo topics? Is it because those tend to go towards race relations, and because of World War II, it's made it sort of taboo to talk about? Because you talk about it quite candidly because it's within the context of science and technology, and that's fine. But actually, if you go out into broader society, you say the word IQ, and bam, you're labeled a Nazi or a racist or a communist or something like that. Why is that?
Well, I think that, I'm first off, a bit upset with because I feel like when they make things taboo, it makes it impossible to really evolve in the way we need to. And more importantly, we can't even discuss this evolution. And just, capitalism doesn't care whether we talk about it or not. I mean, there are companies here in San Francisco where I live, Facebook, Google, Apple, they just want to bring forth technology, and they're going to do so as quickly as possible to make a dollar. If we don't discuss it, it doesn't really stop them. So the point, though, is that we really need to, as a society, try to grow up and say, you know what, this might be difficult to talk to. We need to do it anyways, and we're going to try our best not to create any kind of extra bigotry, any kind of extra racism, but we need to talk about it, because if we can't understand IQ, and then let's say an artificial intelligence has an IQ that's thousands of times us in 10 years, or the Chinese create children that have IQ that are twice as smart as you and I, that's a problem. And we're going to look back in 10 years and say, why didn't we talk about it? Why didn't we do something about it? I know some of these subjects are taboo. I know some of these subjects are touchy and thorny, but that's no reason not to talk about it. Just talk about it with an open mind and say, look, we want to make sure we move forward so that we don't get left behind.
So a lot of people say, especially social scientists and all these, they'll say, oh, why are you talking about the future when there's poverty, hunger, disease, crime, and a whole bunch of other stuff, which, I mean, arguably governments have been trying to sort out and create forever for different reasons, overpopulation, resource depletion, and all this sort of stuff. The Cold War was a war between capitalism and communism. Capitalism won. Capitalism has created transhumanist sort of adventures through corporations, and now we're moving into what you're claiming is a post-capitalist society. So communism lost, capitalism won, and now we're heading post-capitalism. Talk about post-capitalism.
Well, we're not at the post-capitalist society yet, but I do support a basic income because I do think we are going to get to an era where robots do all the work, and frankly, AI and machines are smarter than human beings, and we just won't be able to be competitive except maybe in art, which is completely subjective. So are we going to be a world of artists? I'm not sure. But at some point we get to the Jetsons age where everybody, all machines do everything for us, and we probably have to merge with them. Maybe capitalism survives because as we merge with AI, now we also compete against each other that way. But more likely we kind of get to some type of different post-capitalistic world. And I think ultimately what's going to happen is we're going to look at the universe differently. Right now, the universe is very much like provide for your family, raise a nice family, try to provide and embrace riches. I think in the future, when we have different types of technologies, when we maybe live in the cloud, when we have robotic bodies, when we can go off planet, we might return to a world that's much more curious, much more interested in different types of experiences, off-world experiences, virtual world experiences. Maybe some people will download themselves into the cloud. These kinds of ideas, and that's a very different philosophical premise. Doesn't require much money once you've done it. It's just, what do I live for? And most people will probably say, well, I think I live to satisfy my curiosity, and I live for the ones that I love, and they can come with me in whatever adventure we go on.
So in saying that, so you must be an optimist about the future, even though there are significant challenges to overcome, because then why would you bother having children? Why would you bother raising a family if you knew that there was certain difficulties within the context of a limited positivity?
Well, I mean, there's a good chance that, you know, in 20 years when we do solve the problem of aging, and it could be before that now, people are going to start having children a lot later. And just because of the thing I talked about with delayed fertility advantage, you know, essentially says, delayed fertility advantage essentially says that you have a better chance of having a healthy child, even as a 70-year-old in 50 years time than you do now as a 20-year-old today. Because there'll be better technologies then to make your child stronger, maybe augment its intelligence or whatnot. So we're coming to an age when it just makes more sense to do a lot of these radical things, and these technologies will carry us through to make us totally different types of living entities. And I think much better living entities. And I think that's just something that needs to be embraced. We're not wired to suffer. I mean, we are wired right now to suffer, but we're also wired to become more, I guess, influential in our environment. And that means maybe mixing our brains with the clouds, flowing through the universe as just light, experimenting with whatever our thoughts and intellect can do. I mean, the human brain is we can be, as a human species, much more than that. It just requires us kind of tapping into that power of AI and computers, servers, and different types of technologies so that our intellect can be maybe even 1,000,000 times more than it is now. So what will happen when we're 1,000,000 times smarter? And that's the destiny that I want to go on, and most transhumanists want to go on. And I believe most people want to go on too. I think they want to see how far they can go down the rabbit hole.
Absolutely. So when is longevity escape velocity happening? Is it happening in a few years, 10 years, 20 years?
We might
2045?
It may be happening now, in this idea that every year you gain now is really many more years down the road. It's hard you can't really pinpoint exactly when it's happening, because it requires knowing that moment when you've actually discovered how to live indefinitely. And if tomorrow they come up with a new drug that reverses aging, then all of a sudden, we've been in the last 10, 15 years. So that's a very weird concept to think of, because we're probably not 2 or 3 years away. We're probably 10 to 20 years away. And overcoming death is not probably going to be a miracle pill. It's probably going to be a combination of genetic, enhancements, 3D printed organs, probably ability to live healthier and things like that. And also maybe, just different types of bionics inside yourself. But I mean, there's going to be a lot of different ways to live a lot longer. So it's probably not going to be a magic pill, at least until 20, 30 years down the road.
Do you follow this scale? Humanism, transhumanism, posthumanism, metahumanism. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really subscribe to posthumanism or metahumanism yet. I understand the concepts, and it's nice to break down things like that. I just stick with the transhumanism, because transhumanism really means, from a kind of a Latin point of view, verbally means beyond human. And ultimately, that's really what this all is. Whether we become, pure intelligence that just floats around the cosmos and in the subatomic structures of the universe, and that's where our intelligence lies, and consciously, that could be something very metahuman. But I'm not sure. We're still trying to figure out exactly where that is yet.
So you founded the Transhumanism Party in the United States, and you gave up the chairmanship to Gennady Stevorov II, who I'm having an argument with. No, I'm having a discussion with this guy right now, and I want to bring you in on this debate. So he was saying that out of the agricultural revolution, Leonardo da Vinci was one of the greatest thinkers, right? But Leonardo couldn't envision beyond the event horizon of what was to come after the Industrial Revolution, right? So he couldn't see the electricity and things like that. Henry Ford was one of the catalyst moments for the industrial evolution. But he couldn't really see beyond the event horizon of, say, the information age, the silicon age, or the graphene age, or whatever. We live now in this Cambrian explosion type event of technology, and it's all happening, and information and everything. I was wondering, if that's the truth, then what say you? How do you know that? How do you know that what you're saying is correct? If these people couldn't envision what was beyond their event horizon, if you're saying that transhumanism is going to open up a trillion more different options, how do you know that your direction is correct?
Well, I think the big difference between, some of the classical thinkers like Da Vinci and whatever is that we really have a very good understanding of physics at this point. Now, I'm not saying we have it all figured out. In fact, I'm saying we have a tiny perspective of it probably figured out. But at least we can already see, 10 million light years away. And at least we can already go to such nano visions that we can get to kind of quarks and things like that. Those are things that Da Vinci never really understood. I mean, he was still working on the human beings have blood. Why do we have blood supply? These kinds of things. So we have a much better grasp of how far we can go. But I'm not going to pretend to you that we can also see beyond the event horizon. Maybe the very first AI that will be here will going to say, oh, you humans are kind of naive. Let me tell you what happens through the singularity and then beyond the singularity. And I've written a little bit about beyond the singularity, and it's get into kind of simulation theory and the idea that God may have already existed but gave up the opportunity to be God to create a free will for other humans. And I mean, who knows? And this goes into the other crazy idea that transhumanists basically subscribe to, which is we're definitely not alone in the universe. There's probably millions and millions of other more advanced alien species out there. But do not think of aliens as green human things running, or green, body-like things. These are all AI, artificial intelligences, and way beyond artificial intelligence, maybe quantum intelligence. Like I said, intelligence that just spans the cosmos, infiltrates every single atom. I mean, that's much more likely. And those could have already been existing for billions of years. In fact, like I said, if you take simulation theory, we might just be fragments of those things that are already going. And as a philosophy student, I'm about 50-50 on whether simulation theory is right. But the point is, I also don't believe we can see beyond the event horizon. But we can see a lot more clearly where at least the 100-year future is going to go. But beyond that, we're just as blind as Da Vinci.
Well, that's really good. So I know you want to go for about 20 minutes, so I'll wrap this up. So I'll just read a quote here, a quick quote. It says, as a result of 1,000 million years of evolution, the universe is becoming conscious of itself, able to understand something of its history and its possible future. A cosmic self-awareness of being realized in one tiny fragment of the universe, us human beings. So basically, in this tiny little speck of Orion's belt where we exist out here in this galaxy, whichever one that is, we are waking up and we are slowly becoming gods. Is it godhood? Do you want to become a god?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's not my favorite word because it's so tainted with Judeo-Christian ideology. But yes, I want to become something that's beyond human for sure. And I want it to be much more powerful, much smarter, much more evolved.
And I remember you said you want to cut off your arm to get a bionic one. So you're totally good. I know you have a chip in your arm, in your hand. So you're totally okay with using yourself as sort of a test mechanism for some of these enhancements, these biological enhancements, cybernetic enhancements.
Yeah, I mean, I would do that tomorrow if I knew that, pretty surely that was going to end up being a better arm than my biological one, just because I'm all about evolving. In the same way, if you were running a business and you found a new way to make more money, you might upgrade your business to be better. And I want to upgrade my human body in that exact same way.
One last question I really have burning in me is, do we need a sort of new moral and ethic paradigm in order to combat this? Because the science, like our brains are only a limited capacity, and the technology is moving very fast. But I don't see people talking about moralists and ethicists and new political philosophers in order to combat this. They just talk about the science and they talk about how it can be used. But do we need a whole new paradigm shift in morals and in ethics and philosophy?
I actually don't think so. I think humans are pretty good by their nature. We're getting better. There's no question about that when you look from a historical point of view. So we might be really good in 10, 20, 30 years, especially with the help of AI. We might really care about our fellow people. We might want everyone to have a universal basic income, nobody to starve, nobody to be in poverty. I mean, I think most people want that. Our real problem is our methodology. We just can't simply come up with good systems that work for such huge populations. And I think it's our methodology that needs to improve. I think most people are good at heart. Most people would help a person that's dying on the street. I think the real question at hand is, why are we always falling short when it comes to our methodology? And I'll be honest with you, this is where I come in as sort of a secular person saying, I think we need to use the scientific method to answer all the problems of society, even those in government. When you try to solve problems with religion, when you try to solve problems with your ethnicity, when you try to solve problems outside the scope of something that's purely rational like the scientific method, you find a lot of idiosyncrasies and flaws. And I think as we start to become more of a scientific culture, we're going to be better to each other and solve some of the problems we've always been trying to overcome.
Zoltan Itzan, thanks for coming on Detonation. You gave a speech about beauty, and I just wanted to say that this for me is beauty. Like, because what I'm trying to achieve here is I want to talk to smart people, engage with people who are interesting and clever, and who can help me to navigate the future and help the audience navigate the future. So thank you for contributing to what I consider my own unique perspective on beauty.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much. Zoltan Itzan, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Thank you very much.